So welcome to LiberalViewer Sunday Live Clip Roundup. This is the show where I pick some clips out, mostly from the Sunday talking head political punditry shows that are shown here in the United States on NBC's Meet the Press, CBS Face the Nation, ABC This Week with George Stephanopoulos, Fox News Sunday. Though nothing from Fox News Sunday today. And then I also take some clips from some quasi-news shows. I'm going to have a clip from Amy Poehler on Saturday Night Live's Weekend Update, and also a Stephen Colbert commencement clip, speaking at University of Virginia. There'll be a couple Obama commencement clips at the end. So I like to take these clips, and what I do is I play each of the clips, and then I give my commentary. And then at the end, I take live questions for the Q&A. Let me just see. I have viewers here, I see. Can everyone see and hear me? Yeah, I can see and hear you. Thank you very much, DJ POB, for saying you can see and hear me. So I know everything's going okay. So I have about 10 or 11 clips I'm going to play. So for the show today, as I've explained before, the reason I do this is I see a lot of clips that I don't have the time or all the material to make a full produced video out of, but I'd like to share them with my viewers and give some commentary on them because I think they're important, or there's something about them that I'd like to discuss, or I think should be discussed out in the public. This is my punditry channel, and even though I don't have time to make one of my slicker, more produced videos, I'd like to have the chance to share some of these clips with you in my commentary on the most breaking current events, mostly from the Sunday shows this morning. The first clip is from a commencement address. I believe it was yesterday at University of Virginia, Stephen Colbert, and it's not really on any of current events. He's actually talking about Thomas Jefferson. I see Thomas Jefferson quoted a lot in the comment sections of some of my videos by people on both sides, and I thought it was kind of interesting the way Stephen Colbert pointed out in his commencement address at the University of Virginia, which was founded by Thomas Jefferson. He pointed out how people on both the right and the left can use Thomas Jefferson quotes in support of their arguments, and that's what he said in this clip.
No matter what your political leanings, you can find something he said that backs it up. If you don't trust the financial industry, he said, I believe that banking institutions are more dangerous to our liberties than standing armies. If you're suspicious of the federal overreach, he said, when the government fears the people, there is liberty. When the people fear the government, there is tyranny. If you question religion, he wrote, in every country and in every age, the priest has been hostile to liberty. And if you're an advocate of fiscal austerity, he said, I'm going to pop some tags, only got $20 in my pocket. I'm a hunting, looking for a come up. This is... I'm not saying that on camera.
Okay, so I enjoyed that use of the Thomas Jefferson quotes. Of course, the last one, that's rapper Ryan Lewis. I think he goes on to make a joke about that being a letter from Jefferson to his Secretary of State, Ryan Lewis. So, and in the video description of this video, I'll have a link, and I should even be able to put up a YouTube annotation link so you can just click and see the whole commencement speech. I think there's some funny parts to it, but I just wanted to play that part. Just as sort of a non-current, non-breaking news type clip, but that talks about some of the basic founding principles of the United States. Now, of course, if you watch the Sunday morning news shows like I watched them all this morning, you'll see the topic of the week is Obama immersed in scandal. There are like these, there's the ongoing Benghazi investigation the Republicans have been trying to push since, pretty much Mitt Romney made a statement, I think, on September 11th, 2012, when it happened, or possibly the next day, about the attack on the U.S. consulate or mission in Benghazi and the killing of Ambassador Chris Stevens and 3 other Americans there. And, of course, the two newer scandals, there's the the IRS scandal, where this IRS office, and they're still investigating to what extent, where it was targeting certain groups applying for tax-exempt status as 501c4s, which says that they have to be social welfare organizations, but they can still do political lobbying if that's not their primary purpose. Anyway, this IRS office was targeting them based on all these keywords, including Tea Party and Patriot and Bill of Rights, and so that's scandal number 2. And then the third scandal is this AP scandal, where the Obama administration took all these 2 months worth of phone records from the Associated Press, a news organization here in the United States that had reported on a story about the Obama administration foiling a terrorist plot in May 2012, and it involved the CIA having a mole in Al-Qaeda in Yemen. And so the AP got that story from some government official, and the Justice Department subpoenaed a whole bunch of phone records from the Associated Press to try to figure out who the government official was who leaked information about that to the Associated Press. And anyway, I have clips on all these, but before I get to all the scandals in general, all the scandals specifically, I wanted to talk in general about what the long-term effect of these scandals is going to be. And I was interested to see Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, Republican, the highest-ranking elected Republican in the United States, I think, right at the moment. He said, when asked if he thought any of these scandals were going to be a big issue in the 2014 congressional elections, he didn't seem to think so. And as you can hear for yourself in this question from Meet the Press here.
These issues, all of them, 2 of them, that you were concerned about, will they be fodder for your campaign next year? Do you think it's important for Republicans to campaign on these issues to target President Obama and Democrats?
I don't know what the issues will be next year. If I were predicting what's likely to be the biggest issue in the 2014 election, I think it would be Obamacare. I think it's coming back big time. And by the way, the IRS has a role to play in the implementation of Obamacare, which is another reason why, if we had the opportunity to do it, we ought to pull it out root and branch. The single worst piece of legislation has been passed in modern times in this country. And the American people are beginning to learn, as the premiums go up, as jobs are lost, the full effect of this on our slow growth economy has been enormous. I think that's likely, frankly, David, to be the biggest issue in 2014. There may be others, and some of these issues may arise as well.
So the top-ranking elected Republican in the United States, despite the AP scandal, the IRS scandal, and the Benghazi investigation, he thinks that the number one issue in the 2014 national elections here in the United States is going to be Obamacare. So I don't know, maybe he just wants to campaign on the talking points and issues he's used to. I don't know, but I thought that was interesting that he thinks at least that these scandals don't have legs, or at least not through the 2014 congressional election. He said they might, but at least at the moment, his guess is that it's going to be Obamacare, which I don't know. And also the drag it's putting on the economy, and there's been some good news on the economy in the United States lately, so I don't know, maybe he's just out of date and he's not switching to the new talking points. I don't know. That's my commentary on that, but I thought it was an interesting clip for y'all to see. So, and one thing I thought that the Benghazi scandal, I didn't call it a scandal in that earlier list. One of the things I'm going to say in my commentary today is I think Benghazi's pretty much over, and AP, there may be more to it than I thought, the AP phone records scandal, and I'll get to the IRS one as well, but in the Benghazi, I think Benghazi attack scandal, I think the fact that last Sunday ABC broke these emails, and it turned out that they'd been doctored by some Republican staffer before they'd been leaked to ABC, and they weren't as bad as ABC reported last Sunday. and I think that ABC should say who did it, and people should be looking into that possibly. But I think the White House pretty much has its story down, and Dan Pfeiffer, who's a senior advisor at the White House, he was on pretty much all the Sunday talk shows, and he had like 3 important points about those emails that he made on all the shows, and I thought I'd show you one version of that from, I believe it's This Week with George Stephanopoulos, making his 3 points about Benghazi in this clip.
Watergate? Seriously, George?
Oops.
I mean, Watergate was a scandal.
No, that's not the right one.
Sorry.
Let me start over here. Oh, you know what? I think that, let me get the correct clip out here, the Dan Pfeiffer clip from This Week. And I'll play that one for you. I had the wrong one loaded up. Or, you know what? That clip that I was going to play, that was actually also about the more general scandals. It was like the breadth of the scandals, and whether it should be considered Mitch McConnell. I just showed the clip. Ooh, what? I'm off camera. I'm showing black. Sorry about that. Slight technical difficulty there, but what I wanted to show you before I get to the Dan Pfeiffer clip about Benghazi, I'll get to that in like 2 more clips. But I wanted to show you a couple clips about whether these, having shown the Mitch McConnell clip about these scandals not having legs to last into 2014, there were a couple clips about whether the current scandals put Obama in the situation of Watergate. And that's what you saw. I played that clip first because that actually is the next correct clip. I was jumping ahead. And it's a clip from Katrina, Vanden, Heuvel from The Nation, reacting to George Will's contention that there are shades of Watergate in this. And so instead of going to Dan Pfeiffer, as I said, I'm going to go to that Katrina Vanden Heuvel clip first, and that's it here.
Watergate? Seriously, George? I mean, Watergate was a scandal unique in its depths of criminality. You had a president at the heart of the White House directing the subversion of the FBI and other institutions, including the IRS. There is no evidence, and I think the IRS scandal is outrageous. There is investigation underway. The president has fired the acting head. And the key scandal, which you will disagree with, is that we had, after Citizens United, a flood of money coming in, and you had groups which were clearly political and partisan trying to use this 501c4 categorization to escape political scrutiny. Let us have an investigation, but let us not call it Watergate, because that demeans our history and the full nature of constitutional crises.
And I think that's true. There's certainly no evidence yet of anything approaching like the Watergate scandal. And I had another clip I wanted to play about that as I add that in here. If you want to decide whether something is akin to Watergate, there's no one better to talk about that than Bob Woodward, who was one of the reporters who broke the Watergate scandal, and he was on NBC's Meet the Press, and he talked about whether he thought the Obama administration was in a Watergate scandal level in this clip.
I mean, the people are making comparisons to Watergate. This is not Watergate, but there are some people in the administration who have acted as if they want to be Nixonian, and that's a very big problem. I think.
Who and how?
Pardon? Well, I think on the whole Benghazi thing, you look at those talking points, and I mean, the initial draft by the people are making comparisons to Watergate. This is not Watergate, but there are some people in the administration who have acted as if they want to be Nixonian, and that's a very big problem. I think.
Who and how?
Pardon? Well, I think on the whole Benghazi thing, you look at those talking points, and I mean, the initial draft by the CIA very explicitly said, we know that activists who have ties to Al-Qaeda were involved in the attack. And then you see what comes out a couple of days later, and there is no reference to this. This is a business where you have to tell the truth, and that did not happen here.
Peggy Noonan.
So I guess if what Bob Woodward is saying there is that this hasn't risen to the level of Watergate, but he thinks in the Benghazi scandal that some people have acted in Nixonian ways. And I'm not sure what he means by that. You know, he's talking about how some of how when the talking points were changed, they took out all reference to Al-Qaeda. But, and that's true. That is like the one thing about the talking points that remains true. But I think that what he's missing there is that the reason the changes were made, they were all made by the CIA, and they also were all made because of, to make the investigation safe, to make sure that the investigation of what happened wasn't put into jeopardy. And I think that that's something that Bob Woodward didn't really talk about in that clip, and that's something that you can see from the Dan Pfeiffer clip I talked about before. Dan Pfeiffer actually made the same 3 points on all the shows he went on, I mean, it was obviously the White House talking point set up from the beginning, and he had these all planned out, and he made them with varying success on all the programs. Sorry about all the clicking, but I'm getting all the new clips lined up. But so here is why I think Bob Woodward's point about people acting in a Nixonian fashion regarding Benghazi isn't really true, based on the good talking points that the White House has put together. These 3 points about those emails.
With the email showed 3 things. I think this is very important because they undermine all of the allegations Republicans have been making for months about this. First, the email showed that all of the drafts of the talking points include, written by the CIA, include reference to the influence of a protest here. Second, references to Al-Qaeda and terrorism were not taken out by the White House, as Republicans have asserted, but taken out by the CIA. And third, it shows that everyone here was trying to get it right the best we could, and that the primary driving objective for the White House, the CIA, and the State Department was to ensure we did nothing that interfered with the investigation of the people who did this.
So I think those are pretty good talking points that the White House has gotten out there, and that's true. That one fact is that it was the CIA that made all the changes. You know, there was some input from the State Department person, although it's a non-political person at the State Department who also worked for Dick Cheney. And in addition, there was that part about the attack in Benghazi being a reaction to the Cairo demonstration about the YouTube video. That was in every single version, and in the original CIA version, that it was a reaction to the Cairo demonstration. So that was not something that the White House made up and put in there. That was something that was in the original talking points. So that's, I think, why the Benghazi investigation isn't really going to find much more than has already been there, and even less because of the breakdown of this leak of emails to ABC last week that turned out to have been doctored by some Republican staffer who has not been identified yet. So now the Benghazi scandal, I think, is kind of winding down. Although I think it may come back if Hillary Clinton runs for president, which she probably will. So it will come back in that sense. But in terms of hurting the Obama administration, I think it's winding down. And then the next scandal, of course, is this IRS scandal. And I still haven't seen the facts that show that there was political targeting. I mean, I've talked about this on several previous live events, how it looks like it was a stupid way to try to investigate these 501c4s who are supposed to be social welfare organizations and cannot be primarily political. And so they went to investigate all these new organizations applying for this 501c4 tax-exempt status. The IRS got all these new applications after the Citizens United decision, and was investigating them and was using keywords. And I read the Inspector General's report. They used keywords like Tea Party and Patriot, and so the keywords they used did end up having resulted in a political bias, but there hasn't been any evidence that there was some memo saying we want to go after the enemies of the president coming from somewhere, and Rand Paul was on CNN's State of the Union, and he seemed to think that there was evidence that there was like political targeting directly by the White House or by someone against enemies of the president. And I'm going to give you sort of an extended clip from Rand Paul that you can see here.
They all say this is not political, that this was an attempt to kind of get a hold of this influx of applications for tax-exempt status. Neither you know, well, maybe you do. I don't know how that process works, but we do know that this one place processes 70,000 applications. Can you see in your mind's eye a way that this might not have been political, that this was a misguided, stupid way to sort, but that they didn't intend it to be some kind of political attempt to harass the Tea Party?
I would think that if there was any chance that this was a mistake, the Investigator General wouldn't be coming out and saying otherwise, and the IRS themselves wouldn't be admitting that they made some mistakes.
Well, they say it's a mistake. The question is whether it's political.
Well, I think we're going to have to see the memorandum. Apparently, there is a policy, and I think we're going to find that there's a written policy that says that we were targeting people who were opposed to the president. And when that comes forward, we need to know who wrote the policy and who approved the policy. I can't believe that one agent sort of started this, one rogue agent started this, because it seems to be too widespread. And we do need to get to the bottom of this. But I think what the American people want, it's just like on Benghazi. Why does Benghazi go on? No one was ever fired. So people made tragic errors. No one's accepting responsibility, and no one was fired. Same with the IRS, that they're having some commissioners resign who were going to resign already, and people are still saying, well, was there a policy?
Senator,
who wrote the policy? And now there's rumors that who wrote the policy is the person running Obamacare, which doesn't give us a lot of confidence about Obamacare.
Senator, I have to run. I'm way over on this, but I have to just go back to something you said. Are you telling me you think there's a memo somewhere in which someone said in the memo, we're targeting people who are going after the president? Is that what I heard you say?
Well, we keep hearing the reports, and we have several specifically worded items saying who is being targeted. In fact, one of the bullet points says those who are critical of the president. So I don't know if that comes from a policy, but that's what's being reported in the press and reported orally. I haven't seen a policy statement, but I think we need to see that.
All right. Listen.
A bullet point that said those who were targeting the president? There's nothing like that in the Inspector General's report. I don't know where Rand Paul's getting that. And that whole Candy Crowley episode there reminds me of that Obama-Romney debate where she corrected Mitt Romney on whether President Obama had called the attack on Benghazi a terrorist act or an act of terror the next day in the Rose Garden. And she's kind of like correcting Rand Paul there, and he didn't quite take the hint that he was like going way beyond the evidence. I don't know what that was about. And I mean, there was definitely... people had to go through much more than they should have had to go through to get tax-exempt status, and I talked about this in a previous live event, and I saw someone say that it's not a free speech issue as to whether someone gets tax-exempt status or not, but that is a free speech issue if or at least a First Amendment, your First Amendment free speech rights are violated if you're applying for government benefit and the government is discriminating against you based on your First Amendment political beliefs. That is the expression of your First Amendment free speech rights. Then that is a First Amendment free speech violation, even though it has to do with tax exempt status. If you're applying for that government benefit, it could be getting into a government school, or it could be a lot of different things. But it's definitely a First Amendment violation if your political beliefs are the reason that you're being discriminated against when you try to get a government benefit. But the evidence here is that they were trying to find people who weren't really social welfare organizations but were political organizations, and they used bad criteria that ended up disproportionately affecting conservative groups. At least that's what the evidence shows so far. And I thought there was kind of a funny clip about why the Tea Party was targeted by the IRS on Saturday Night Live last night. I love their weekend update show, and Amy Poehler came back for a special edition of Really with Seth Meyers and Amy Poehler on the Weekend Update show, and that included a clip about why the IRS targeted Tea Party groups in this clip.
Really, Tea Party? Really? You're surprised that you're targeted by the IRS? You named yourself after a group of people who proudly and historically violated tax laws. Look, if I had a vanity license plate that said Weed 420, I might expect to get pulled over now and then.
If you had that license plate?
Not now.
All right.
So that was kind of amusing, but I think there's kind of a real political point there about, and I saw people ask me that if I thought the Tea Party was targeted because they're anti-tax, if they were targeted by the IRS because they're anti-tax, and if that makes sense. And I don't really think that does make sense. As I was saying before, I think they were targeted because they were pretending to be social welfare organizations when they were really primarily political, and it's this whole 501c4 thing, and it's a long, involved issue. And that's why I think that while the IRS scandal, their people's First Amendment rights possibly or even probably were violated by the IRS, and these extensive questionnaires they had to answer to get this benefit, because of their political beliefs or because they belong to certain political organizations. I don't think this is going to be a scandal that really makes it all the way up into the White House, or at least not based on any of the evidence so far. But one of the things I think may end up being more of a scandal than I said last week is this AP scandal. And one reason for that, last week I was saying that they were investigating this leak, and the leak was of, that the CIA had a mole in Al-Qaeda in Yemen, and that the government does have the authority and even the responsibility to look for people leaking classified information that gets people killed. And that was at least the beginning of the story. But there were a couple things that came out in the last week, or more information at least that I've learned about, that made me think that it might be more of a scandal. And so what made me think about that is first they had on Face the Nation this week Gary Pruitt, who from the Associated Press was on, and he talked specifically about some of the things the administration that did wrong. Last week I was saying, well, maybe the scope, there was too great a scope to the, even though they had a right to go look to find the leaker, that they might have asked for too much information or too long or something like that. But Gary Pruitt from the Associated Press was on Face the Nation this morning, and he gave a lot more information about the way the Obama administration has gone out of bounds on what they did with the Associated Press, and you can hear him explain that in this clip.
Ever at any point ask you for these phone records?
No, we never heard about it whatsoever. We knew that there was a publicly announced there was an investigation into the leak. But the first we heard was a week ago last Friday, when we got the notice that they had swept up these records earlier this year for a 2-month period in 2012. And so that's the first we'd heard of it. And so now they possess the phone records of thousands of news-gathering phone calls of the Associated Press, and they are required to narrow, under their own rules, they are required to narrow this request as narrowly as possible so as to not tread upon the First Amendment. And yet they had a broad, sweeping collection, and they did it secretly. Their rules require them to come to us first, but in this case they didn't, claiming an exception, saying that if they had, it would have posed a substantial threat to their investigation. But they've not explained why it would, and we can't understand why it would. We never even had possession of these records. They were in the possession of our telephone service company, and they couldn't be tampered with. So usually they would come to us, we would try to narrow the request, the subpoena. If we didn't come to an agreement, we could go to a judge, and an independent arbiter could decide upon the scope of this subpoena. Well, we never got a chance.
And, that's a lot more information about why the Obama administration subpoena here, or the Justice Department subpoena, was overbroad. It took information, it went way beyond what was necessary to try to find this leak, and especially the way they did it secretly, and used this exception that lets them do it secretly if there's some chance that there's going to be a problem with the evidence. But as Gary Pruitt pointed out there, the records they were going after weren't even in the possession of the Associated Press, so there was no way they could do anything with the records. It was in the possession of the phone company, and so there's no real reason that I'm going to wait for more investigation. But this is one of the first details I've learned about how the Justice Department's investigation of Associated Press did things that were dishonest or way too broad, and their justification for being that broad was there really wasn't a justification. So maybe this Associated Press scandal is going to be more broad than I thought it was going to be, and at least when I was talking about it last week, when I was just talking about the justification of finding the government leaker, when the fact that there was a mole in Yemen had been leaked, and that could actually get somebody killed. Now, I also, Katrina Vanden Heuvel, back on This Week with George Stephanopoulos, talked about the AP scandal and how it fit into a broader pattern. I've been seeing a lot of Republicans talking about a broader pattern of intimidation and mismanagement in the Obama administration, and I don't really see that, but there is there really is a track record in the Obama administration of going after leakers and even the press. And Katrina Vanden Heuvel, back on This Week with George Stephanopoulos, pointed that out in this clip.
The real issue, which predates this week, and is it a scandal? It's a scandal to some, but we've known about it, is the AP story. I mean, the fact that this administration picked the baton from Bush and failing to uphold what it promised, has had the worst record on press freedom. You can't be a situational civil libertarian, George. Listen, the press freedom record, the transparency record of this administration has prosecuted more people for leaks, officials, than any others. And I think that is something maybe millions of people in this country don't care, because they don't care about Benghazi or the IRS story right now. But that's something that speaks to the core of democracy and what we stand for.
Let me take a step back.
And I think that's true of all the scandals. That the more details coming out about the AP scandal, and I think it does fit into a larger pattern of going after leakers. So of the three scandals right now, Benghazi, IRS, and AP, I'm now thinking AP may be the stronger scandal. But they all need, except Benghazi doesn't really need much more investigation. But the IRS scandal and the AP scandal do definitely need more investigation, and there may be more there, and especially on the AP, the more I'm learning about it, the more I'm worried about it. Although, one of the things that I find kind of ironic about it is that, this is getting just records of what phone calls they made in this 2-month period, while the government has been listening in on international phone calls and the content and emails under this, pretty unknown wiretap, that parts have leaked out about this wiretapping program, but it's still mostly secret, and the press has not really covered that very much. But then when members of the press have just their phone records subpoenaed for a couple months, then it becomes a big story. So at least I find that part ironic anyway, that the press seems to care a lot more when it's members of the press than all these Americans whose phone calls and emails, when they're going over international borders, they get habitually taken into this dragnet of wiretapping. At least that's what we've heard so far. So before I finish off, and I am going to try to take a couple questions, even though I'm already over the 30 minutes, I did want to play a couple clips that weren't on any of these scandals, but from President Obama at a commencement address that he made. I think it was actually this morning. I saw it live. It was at Morehouse College. Which is a men's college, historically black college, and he's made a couple points that I thought were worth mentioning. First, because my last video was about racism, I wanted to play this extended clip where President Barack Obama says some things that at least the people on Fox News might find surprising to hear him say about racism in his commencement address in this clip.
We know that too many young men in our community continue to make bad choices. And I have to say, growing up, I made quite a few myself. Sometimes I wrote off my own failings as just another example of the world trying to keep a black man down. I had a tendency sometimes to make excuses for me not doing the right thing. But one of the things that all of you have learned over the last 4 years is there's no longer any room for excuses. I understand there's a common fraternity creed here at Morehouse. Excuses are tools of the incompetent used to build bridges to nowhere and monuments of nothingness. Well, we've got no time for excuses. Not because the bitter legacy of slavery and segregation have vanished entirely, they have not. Not because racism and discrimination no longer exist. We know those are still out there. It's just that in today's hyper-connected, hyper-competitive world with millions of young people from China and India and Brazil, many of whom started with a whole lot less than all of you did, all of them entering the global workforce alongside you, nobody is going to give you anything that you have not earned. Nobody cares how tough your upbringing was. Nobody cares if you suffered some discrimination. And moreover, you have to remember that whatever you've gone through, it pales in comparison to the hardships previous generations endured, and they overcame them. And if they overcame them, you can overcome them too.
I think that's a great message that, you know, despite the existence of racism, it's not an excuse, the no excuses message, and I was glad to see that. And I think that sometimes people on the left and Barack Obama get caricatured as not believing in personal responsibility, you know, the whole "you didn't build that." So that's definitely a message of personal responsibility. And one other thing, you know, as Barack Obama's president of the United States, he's doing all these great things or not great things depending on your point of view, but by great I mean important, monumental things. And so I was kind of interested to hear him say one other thing about what is really important in this clip.
I will tell you this, everything else is unfulfilled if we fail at family, if we fail at that responsibility. I know that when I am on my deathbed someday, I will not be thinking about any particular legislation I passed. I will not be thinking about a policy I promoted. I will not be thinking about the speech I gave. I will not be thinking about the Nobel Prize I received. I will be thinking about that walk I took with my daughters. I'll be thinking about a lazy afternoon with my wife. I'll be thinking about sitting around the dinner table and seeing them happy and healthy and knowing that they were loved. And I'll be thinking about whether I did right by all of them.
So, I mean, you know, you hear people say that a lot, but I wonder if on President Obama's deathbed, if that's really what he's going to be thinking about. I hope so. Also, I'm over half an hour. I have a wife and daughter waiting to have dinner, so I'm going to take, I also have to do something for my family, but I'm going to take a couple questions here. I did want to play a lot of clips. I think that people like the clips, but I am going to look at some of the comments here and answer a few questions or get some discussion going. I'm just going to take the on-topic ones if I can find some. Andrew Blumenfeld asked, does YouTube limit your live show to a half hour, or is that your choice? Well, that's pretty much my choice, especially for the Liberal Viewer Wednesday that I do at 4:30 on Wednesday. I find it difficult to perform much more than half an hour. This one with the clips, it's a little easier to talk. I get a little break, and so I can go a little longer, and you can see I'm already over 30 minutes, but I am going to finish soon. Let me see if I can find a couple on-topic question. Oh, let's see. Here's something about Woodward. A Lulzy apprentice says, I can't say I like Woodward anymore. He is saying that some people in the current administration think they are trying too hard to craft a story. Yeah, I don't know. Woodward, I'm kind of hit and miss with him. That whole thing where he said the Obama administration threatened him, and it turned out that the email where he was threatened was anything but threatening. Alan Kreider said Woodward is way beyond his retirement age, but I mean, he did he started a generation of investigative reporters inspired by Watergate, and I mean, he did good work there, and in a lot of his books, he's had a lot of good sources. So I don't really want to say that he has nothing worthwhile to say, but I do think he's kind of hit and miss, and I wouldn't say he's like a guru who everything he says should be taken as gospel, because that is definitely not the case. Let me take a look if I can find one more on-topic comment here to discuss before I finish up. Let me see. North Tennessee. He stole that from Bill. Let's see, a lot of comments from the same people. So I guess since I don't have a lot of on-topic comments, I will save a lot of these questions here. I do my Liberal Viewer Wednesday live, which is just a Q&A show, and I've been thinking of stopping that show because it seems to be less popular than this show, but I'll at least be doing it for a few more weeks, and I will definitely take your questions on any topic, at least any topic I can answer, on Liberal Viewer Wednesday live at 4:30 p.m. Pacific this coming Wednesday. And you can also send me questions in advance. I actually prefer that because then I can do a little research and give you a better answer. You can post those on my Twitter with twitter.com/liberalviewer or facebook.com/liberalviewer, or post it right on my channel page here, youtube.com/liberalviewer. I think there's still a comment section if they haven't gotten rid of that altogether. I do have an upcoming video. I haven't announced it yet, but you can hear it here first. My next video, I believe, is going to be called Should Students Be Suspended for Willful Defiance, which will be critiquing a Bill O'Reilly and Geraldo Rivera discussion of a California policy on whether students can be suspended in public school for willful defiance alone. So that should be coming up sometime in the next few days. Thank you all for joining me. I'm glad to have so many people watching and giving questions, even if they weren't all on topic. So have a good evening.